Every single year, thousands of the brightest minds from India, Nigeria, Brazil, Egypt, and dozens of other developing countries board planes to the United States, Europe, and Canada, and most of them never come back. Call it what you want, but brain drain doesn't capture the scale of what's actually happening. This is arguably the largest talent heist in human history. Rich countries are systematically pulling in the best engineers, doctors, scientists, and entrepreneurs from poorer nations, leaving those countries without the human capital they desperately need to develop. And in 2026, this is accelerating faster than almost anyone predicted, threatening to lock in a permanent divide between nations that can afford talent and nations that can only produce it for someone else. Let's start with a number that should genuinely stop you in your tracks. Nigeria, a country of more than 220 million people, currently has only about 55,000 doctors actively practicing medicine inside its own borders. That's roughly one doctor for every 3,600 to 4,000 Nigerians, far below what the World Health Organization considers a safe minimum. And it's getting worse by the year. At least 16,000 Nigerian doctors have emigrated in just the last 5 years alone, part of a mass exodus so culturally significant it has its own name. Japa, Yoruba slang for to flee. More than 40,600 Nigerian doctors relocated to the UK alone in a recent 3-year span. Nigeria's government has responded by expanding medical school admissions by 160% between 2023 and 2025, but training a doctor takes years, and losing one takes an afternoon at the embassy. India tells a similarly staggering story on a much larger scale, losing tens of thousands of highly skilled professionals every single year to the US, UK, Canada, and Australia. Brazil and other Latin American nations are losing engineers and scientists at record rates too. This isn't simply individuals making personal choices in a vacuum, though, of course, it partly is. It's also the predictable result of a deliberate, well-funded strategy by wealthy nations. The United States, Canada, Germany, the UK, and Australia have all built immigration systems specifically engineered to attract high-skilled workers. Points-based immigration, fast-track visas for STEM graduates, generous research funding, and salaries multiple times higher than what's available at home create an almost irresistible pull. For a talented engineer in Bangalore or a doctor in Lagos, the chance to earn 5 or 10 times more money, work with better equipment and technology, and give their family real security isn't a hard decision. It's often the only rational one available to them. The cost to developing countries here is enormous, and it compounds year after year. Every doctor who leaves Nigeria represents years, sometimes over a decade, of public educational investment the country will likely never recover a return on. Every engineer who moves to Silicon Valley is one less person available to help build local industries, local infrastructure, and local innovation. This brain drain doesn't just slow development, it actively perpetuates a cycle of underdevelopment, because countries lose their most capable people at exactly the moment they need them most to drive growth. Meanwhile, wealthy destination countries receive what amounts to a massive, invisible subsidy, fully educated, highly skilled workers without ever having paid a cent toward training them. This talent transfer is one of the most significant and most rarely discussed forms of global inequality operating today. The AI revolution has poured gasoline on this fire. Global demand for AI talent is now so intense that rich countries and their biggest companies are offering enormous salaries, stock options, and fast-tracked visas specifically to engineers from developing nations. Google, OpenAI, and Meta actively recruit straight out of India's top engineering institutes, Nigerian universities, and Brazil's growing tech hubs, often before students have even finished their final year. This creates a genuinely vicious cycle. Developing nations invest heavily in producing exactly the kind of graduates the AI economy wants most, only to watch those same graduates leave for dramatically higher pay abroad almost immediately after graduating, meaning the country's investment in its own future workforce ends up training talent for someone else's economy instead. But here's a genuinely important twist that most coverage of this topic misses entirely, and it complicates the simple "rich countries always win" narrative. According to a 2026 Boston Consulting Group analysis tracking over 220 million skilled professionals worldwide, global cross-border migration of highly skilled workers actually fell by more than 11% in 2025, as wealthy destination countries began tightening visa and immigration policies rather than loosening them. And in the middle of that global slowdown, India didn't just hold steady. It posted the single largest year-over-year gain in global AI talent share of any country tracked, driven partly by skilled professionals actually choosing to return home. Researchers have started calling this emerging pattern brain circulation rather than brain drain. This doesn't erase Nigeria's doctor shortage or the broader crisis facing most developing nations. Those problems remain very real and are getting worse in many places. But it does mean the old, simple story of talent flowing permanently and exclusively from poor countries to rich ones is already breaking down in at least some of the countries most associated with it. The geopolitical implications of all this remain profound regardless. Countries that lose their talent become more dependent on foreign technology and foreign investment, and struggle to build the kind of independent innovation ecosystems that drive long-term national wealth. Meanwhile, the countries successfully attracting talent become even more dominant in the global economy, compounding an advantage that was already substantial. This talent heist is widening the gap between rich and poor nations at precisely the moment when technology was supposed to be the great equalizer, leveling the playing field between countries instead of tilting it further. The ethical dimension here is genuinely troubling, and it's a question mainstream immigration debates almost never seriously engage with. Is it fair for wealthy countries to systematically draw away the human resources of poorer nations? Resources those nations spent scarce public money training? What responsibility, if any, do wealthy countries carry toward the development of the countries they're pulling talent from? There's no comfortable answer to either question. Acknowledging an individual's right to seek a better life for their family, while also acknowledging the structural damage that mass departure does to the country left behind, requires holding two uncomfortable truths at once. Solutions here are difficult, but not impossible. Developing countries can work to retain more of their own talent through better salaries, dedicated research funding, and meaningful quality-of-life improvements. Nigeria's push to dramatically expand medical school capacity is one example of trying to outpace the losses, even if it doesn't address the root causes driving people to leave in the first place. Wealthier countries, for their part, could build more ethical immigration frameworks that include compensation or structured partnership programs with the countries training this talent. But meaningful change on either side will require political will that right now is largely absent from the conversation. The great global talent heist remains one of the most important, most underreported stories of our time, reshaping the world economy, global power dynamics, and the future of human development, one departing flight at a time. Whether the world continues down this path or finds a genuinely more equitable way forward will help determine the shape of the rest of this century. What do you think? Is this simply the price of individual freedom and opportunity, or does it represent a structural injustice that wealthy nations have a responsibility to address? Let me know in the comments, and if this gave you a clearer picture of what's really happening beneath the immigration headlines, subscribe, because this story is only accelerating from here.